surviving.
I mean, I don't know if anybody can really say I'm good right now, but considering, I'm good considering.
Considering, the basics are okay. Got a roof over my head, the family's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I have had this impact people who I work with and a student in my program. So I don't feel unaffected by it, unfortunately. But not my immediate family. I've also had a really close friend who's fighting it right now. So it's definitely immediate, but
yeah. Brave new world, man. Craziness. It's Croatoan.
Oh, supernatural. There is always a supernatural reference that we can come back to.
But if only they were here to save the day.
we should have all listened to Rob Benedict when he said hoard toilet paper, apparently.
So I'm really excited about your wonderful new book. It's beautiful.
Isn't it so pretty?
It's so just beautiful.
The cover art is amazing. I love what she did with like the Winchesters represented by the back of the silhouettes in the car, and then Cass represented by the angel wings in the sky kind of watching over them, and the journey by the mile markers. It's just so like symbolic, and then it's just beautiful.
Yeah, all the photos inside, and mine. And
yes, including your contribution. I know, I love all the photos make it so pretty. And I was excited this time to be able to include not just color photos, which I love, but also artwork. Yeah. So there's art by fans and photos by fan photographers who are amazing. And yeah, I think I wanted the book to be as pretty as the show, and the show is very, very pretty.
It is a beautiful show. Yeah, and I think you really captured it here. How was it? What was it like putting this book together? I know, like, it's... Are you going to start crying now?
Oh, yeah, no, I should. This was the most stressful book I have ever done. It was so difficult solely because we had such an insanely short timetable to put it together. By the time I sort of, the show decided it was going to end, and then I was traumatized for a while. So the last thing on my mind was like, oh God, if I'm going to put a book out about the legacy of the show, like it has to come out by May. So by the time I went through developing a pitch and had the cognitive and emotional strength to do that, and then I went to the publisher who did Family Don't End with Blood, because I know what a great bunch of people they are, and I know they love the show, and I know they are the only publisher I could find that was really on board with making the book also benefit charity, which I felt was really important to do. So I went to them, and they know me, like we had worked together. But honestly, when I said to them, but it needs to come out in May, they were like, that is impossible. Like that, we just can't do it. Like that, no book has ever been put together that quickly. Let alone an edited collection with 38 chapters. Like, no, we can't do it. So it was just insane trying to pull this together. The last 6 months have just been, I don't even know how to describe them, but you know what? It got done, and it got done by May. The book actually went to print before the show went out of production. So, the way you put books together, the timeline is they go to print long before the actual release date. So we were locked into that May date, and it didn't matter. But honestly, I'm kind of glad that it came out now, because even though the show's ending is delayed, my God, we all need like an inspiring, positive book. So I'm kind of glad that we got locked into that May date.
Yeah, sometimes these things just work, in your favor. It's like the art gods are like with you,
And I mean, and there's no use kvetching about it anyway, because it is what it is. But it did make it hard. I mean, there are a couple of people, a handful of people who really wanted to write chapters, and they couldn't do it within the time frame. you know, Jensen, Jared, and Misha were busy trying to finish the show, filming the show, and they were not in an emotional space to sit down and write a chapter like Jared did for Family Don't End with Blood. So that's the reason their chapters they're partly original content, but that would have made them relatively short, and we wanted them to be helpful and to mean something. So that's why we also added things that they'd said in like public events over the past year, which were quite emotional about the show ending. So those are in there too. But obviously, if we hadn't had the kind of time limit that we had, you know, some of those people, I won't say their names, they really wanted to be included and they couldn't be included at all because of the timetable. So that does make me sad.
Well, volume 2.
Right now, I am too tired to think of. I keep saying,
right. Recover.
Yeah.
Recover.
This is what happens every time I do one. I say I'm never doing one again. That was too much work. I'm never doing one again. And then I recover, and I'm like, you know, I have a really cool idea. I think I need to do another book. So yeah,
I do the exact same thing with documentary. Every film I finish, I say, I'm never fucking doing that again. That was hell. I hate this. I'm not doing, what's the point, you know? And then like, you know, 6 months later, I'm like, I have a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, yeah.
I know. It's the curse of being like inspired by something is you want to create around it and you can't stop yourself.
Yeah. It's just, you know, you're an artist. It's what you do. It's who you are. You know, you can't stomp on that, you know?
No.
You know, I wonder about the people who have to force themselves to make stuff because, I mean, there's aspects of creating that I don't like. You know, I love production. I love screening. I love, you know, creating the events. Post-production, not a thing I enjoy, but I found a partner who does that. So, I mean, there's elements of it that I just find just grinds, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, the ideas, the interviewing, all that stuff is just stuff I love to do. And I couldn't stop if I wanted to.
No, creativity like pushes for expression. That's one of the things, I know we've talked about this in some of our work together, but one of the things that I love about fandom as a community is it really supports and nourishes creativity. So as soon as you are in a fandom community, I think that is just more encouragement for your creativity to come out in all kinds of ways. So if you were hoping to stifle it, being in fandom is not the place to stifle it.
Yeah, I love that you included so many of like, you know, the fans, so many of the fans I know in the book, their essays. That was really nice to see. And some I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a mix, both for the actors and the fans. It's a mix of people who you'll recognize and people who you never would have encountered if you hadn't read their chapter in the book. And I wanted it to be that way because it's sort of a daunting thing to say that you want a book, if it's going to be sort of the final book about the show and its legacy, you want everybody to be able to see themselves represented in it, you know, but that is what we wanted. And part of that is just not going back to the same people who we hear from a lot. And also a lot of those people, you know, the actors who we see at conventions a lot and hear from, they wrote beautiful, heartfelt, wrote their hearts out in Family Don't End with Blood. And I wasn't going to ask them to do that again. Like they already did that.
Right.
So this was a great opportunity to ask people who maybe you weren't familiar with their story, both actors and fans. So I like that happened.
Yeah, I think it's a really good, I think it's about as meta as it gets. I mean, it is supernatural, you know, it is everything I love about supernatural, you know, it's the fans, it's the actors, it's, you know, everyone, and what it means to everybody.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that is I asked, the one instruction that I gave people, I wanted them, again, to tell their own story in their own words. Everybody's words is entirely their own words. And that was important to us. But the one thing that I asked everybody to address in their chapter was, what do you think the legacy of the show is going to be? That's like the theme that ties it together. So each of the fans touched on that. The actors touched on that. Jared, Jensen, and Misha touched on that. Like Davy Perez, one of the writers, like they all weighed in on that. And that's kind of what ties it together. Because I think that's what makes the book really positive and hopeful. You know, the show does have a legacy. Yes, it's going to end sometime soon. We don't know when, but yes, it's going to end, but the legacy is never going to go away. Like, this show has had such an impact on its fandom, on its actors, on the world in general, through all the charity work and activism that's come out of it. It's, I mean, it's a thing. It's a
I
thing
made
that's not
so
gonna
many
go away.
friends through this fandom, you know, and seen so much, you know, creative work. I mean, Squee, the first episode, you know, the first Squee, I mean, that wouldn't, right? It's Kim
Yeah.
Red's story, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you and I never would have met if we hadn't been standing in a line at Wizard World and I had a Supernatural t-shirt on. Like, that's literally how we met. You walked up and were like, oh, I like that show.
It's true. It's true. And so many of my good friends I've met that way, like, you know, wearing Supernatural or another show I like t-shirt, and you're like, hey, I love that show. And then suddenly you're besties and you're telling each other your life stories.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
So what's your idea of the legacy of Supernatural?
I
For
mean,
you?
I think there's a couple of important ones. I mean, the personal legacy for so many of us is the way it's changed our individual life, whether that's bringing forever friends into our lives that have enriched our lives, or whether that's, you know, it compelled you to like do things that you never would have done otherwise,
Like
whether
Gish
it's
West?
make films or write books or travel. I mean, people have, like, I never would have traveled to all the places that I've traveled if it wasn't for Supernatural. And also kind of the personal change that has happened for so many people from being inspired by the show itself and the characters. I mean, the always keep fighting mantra has been very real and very personal for so many people. Those characters, Sam, Dean, Cass, like, they've
Team
inspired
Free
people.
Will.
Yeah, Team Free Will. Like, they've inspired people to keep going through all the shit that we all run into in our lives. So I think it has a very personal legacy, but I think its legacy sort of on the industry side is also important. And that's not a main focus of the book, but it's touched on.
Well,
I mean,
15 years is unheard of these days.
it is. It's unprecedented. And the way the show did it has never been done. You know, this weird kind of reciprocal symbiotic relationship between the cast and the fans, because we had conventions like every other weekend. So these are actors who, like, maybe they had stereotypes about fans to start out, I don't know, but they couldn't sustain them because these are people they're seeing every 2 weeks and they know them and they know who they are. So it really did develop in a very different way.
Yeah. Yeah, they always keep fighting, definitely, you know, stays with me. And, you know, Wayward, of course.
Yeah, the permission to be who you are. I mean, that doesn't always come out of a show. The fact that the fandom and the cast too pulled those messages from the characters of the show and then made them our own and incorporated them into our lives, like, that's life-changing. Right down to, you know, the podcast that Brianna and Kim do. Like, that's a legacy of the show, but it's a thing in itself now that is, I think, so important because it's women being real and encouraging other women to be real. And that's really powerful. Like, this show just has a crazy amount of little legacies that came out of the show, but that are important.
Yeah, and well, and how many books have you written on it? I mean, your personal
6.
legacy. That's a pretty good record.
I was a little inspired by this show, I think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we all were, you know. And that's what I was going to say that I sort of lost track of. It's so interesting that, like, Kim Manner's quote of "kick it in the ass" has, you know, that has continued down. You know, everyone has continued that down the line, even when he's gone. Like, that, you know, has stayed as part of the show.
Yeah, and I think that's really also due to the main cast, like Jensen Jared from the beginning and Misha for the past 10 years. Like, whoever I say this all the time, but the casting agents, all of them for this show, just deserve like a statue erected to them, because
No
they
question.
found the most amazing group of people. Like those guys also, they are the kind of emotional guys who recognize things like legacy. So the reason Kim Manners is still so important on that set and to those people is because that's the way they emotionally like look at life. That's why they created the kind of set that they created. So I think that even that subtle way of looking at other humans and the teamwork aspect of working with other humans has sort of filtered down into the messages that fans also take from the show. And anyone who comes to work on it as a guest actor also gets subsumed into that.
Into the family.
Yeah, yeah. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, and they all feel it as part of the family. It's really wonderful. You know, even the characters who were only on for a couple episodes, become part of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are chapters in the book that are written by actors who have been on one episode. I think three. No, maybe no, three. I think three of the chapters are written by actors who were on one episode, and another three or four are actors that were on a couple of episodes. But this show is so impactful that being on one episode can be life-changing. I'm thinking of like Lee Roomer and Hugo Ateo, who were the Hunter husbands in the episode The Chitters, which was a groundbreaking episode for, what it did for portraying a gay couple of hunters and who they were and how matter of fact that was. But their chapters are about, and they're written separately, but they touch on the same things, about how that experience and that powerful episode changed them as people. And I love that one of the things that came out of that is that they developed a friendship that is still an incredibly close friendship to this day. And I mean, that's the extraordinary power of this show.
Yeah, I don't think that legacy is going anywhere. I think those, most of those people will stay friends forever, and
yeah, I
we'll
think
be able to see them at other cons one day. And
one day, yes, yeah. And a lot of them, I know Julie McNiven writes about this. I think Shoshana Stern writes about this, about how important it is to them, sort of the camaraderie that has developed between the actors. It's like a reciprocal thing happened. The actors developed their sort of little traveling band and their text threads that they all depend on, and the fandom did the same thing.
Yeah.
So it kind of did the same thing for both groups of people.
And seeing, the behind the scenes, like, Ruth Connell and was it Rob Benedict both like doing like face masks.
Yeah. I mean, life changing for those two for sure. This has been, in a huge way. But that's true for so many of us.
Yeah. So, any idea when they come back?
No, I don't. I mean, it all. Right now, no one can go to Canada right now. That's for sure.
Yeah. And how many episodes do we have left?
They only have 2 left to film. They had started, they were one day into filming the penultimate episode. So they have that one to finish and then the whole finale. And then there's, 5 others or whatever that are filmed, but were in post. Right. So are not completely done either. So, I mean, it's kind of like a mini little season, a 7-episode season.
Yeah. I'm, in between, it helps because I don't think I could cope with it all ending at one point, Yeah,
it would have been, I mean, I have mixed feelings about it because on the one hand, they were really, I think, geared up to finish, and they were in an emotional space where that emotion would have been very organic for the finale. So I think it's going to be different going back to it after a break, and I don't know what that will do to the experience for them. And I also really don't, I mean, it's unlikely that they will have their same crew with them or maybe even film at the same place. So I think for them, the experience is going to be very different, and it probably would have been much more organic if they were able to finish. But on the other hand, I think if this fandom was having to deal with, and Supernatural's also completely done, and we're in the middle of a pandemic, like that's a lot to deal with all at once. So
yeah, We need them. We need them to look forward to.
Yeah, yeah. So it's something we can still hang on to. And honestly, that's what I wanted the book to be. Like, I wanted it to be something, I want it to be something that people can hang on to sort of physically, but also emotionally, to never forget the show, to always remember why it was so important and why it was so special. It's right there in all the pages. You can pick it up and hang on to it and really know how special it was. And when you're grieving, like, that's a really important thing, is to have some kind of transitional object that you can take with you, so that you have to deal with the loss, but you don't have to give up what was special and important about that thing that you've lost. So that's what I'm hoping the book is for people. Yeah,
that's beautiful. Perfect. That's a perfect way to end on it. They can buy it on Amazon, I'm assuming, and your website, Fangasm?
Yep, there's links on my website, fangasmthebook.com, and there's links on Amazon, or you can also buy it. I want to give a plug to local booksellers and indie bookshops, because most of them are carrying it as well. So both the big outlets and the smaller outlets. So yeah.
And what charity are you supporting?
Oh, yes, that's important to say. So every purchase of the book benefits Random Acts, which is Misha Collins' global charity that's done so much good in the world, and SPN Survivors, which is a nonprofit that does work around suicide prevention and awareness, that also came out of Supernatural. So both of those charities are part of the legacy of Supernatural, because they came directly out of the show and the fandom. So we're very proud to support them.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for creating this. This is wonderful, and it'll be my talisman to get me through this.
Mine too. Mine's going to get me through it too. I just keep it here to hug. And thank you very much for contributing a very beautiful picture that I happen to really love of Todd Stashwick, whose chapter is awesome, and I love that photo.
Yeah, it's a great chapter. Yeah. You and I will have to chat again soon. And yes, if there's a volume 2.
Okay, I got it. You don't think I'm already like, already putting together a list? You don't think I'm not? Of course I am. So you just volunteered to go on it. So I hope you don't change your mind.
No, I would never. I would be honored. I'd love it. Thanks so much, Lynn. I love you. It's great to see you.
You too.
Talk soon.
Okay.
Okay, stay safe.
You too.
And kick in the ass. Bye, honey.